Bonjour, bonsoir, dear friends, and welcome to JCB Live. Happy hour. As you could see, the days are starting to be a little longer in the heart of California, in one of the most amazing theater of nature ever. We are in the heart of Raymond Vineyards. And the gentleman we have as our guest today is the fabulous, famous Jeff Cox. Jeff Cox has been very well known in the world of organic for over half a century. He was the man behind the Rodale Gardens, organic magazines, and he's written over 20 books on the subject, whether it's about gardening, whether it's about the life of plants, the life of microbes, the transformation of the planets, whether it's about writing for the Press Democrats, for Decanter magazine, and a lot of other phenomenally well-known magazine. He's the big authority on everything dealing with the most powerful force in the world is Mother Nature. So I'm delighted to welcome Jeff because he was the one who participated in writing with us the wonderful theater of nature. The bubble and the pressure is coming. And Jeff is here. We are ready. Jeff Cox. Woohoo! Wasn't it an intro? You see, Jeff, when you come, the earth gets crazy.
Well, and the glass of wine doesn't hurt either. Good to see you, John Charles.
Great to see you. And dear friend, it's an honor and a privilege to welcome a friend who's been part of everything we do since 2004.
That's right. We go way back.
Ah la la, we look better, younger. And please, Jeff, let's have a seat in one of your favorite places in the world. So how does it feel to be out after 15 months of kind of living inside?
Hiding in the cellar, I call it. I have been hiding in the cellar, writing my head off for the last 15 months because, you know, you can't go out.
Yes.
You can't just have a normal life. So being buried in my little writing room at home has been very productive.
Well, I love your writing in at home. When you say little, it's surrounded with nature.
It is. I have a lovely place right over the mountains in Sonoma, and I grow all kinds of fruit trees and wonderful things there. So it's
well. Let's have a toast to you being out, looking younger than ever, and being as vibrant as ever, and more inspired than ever.
I might say the same thing about you.
So, Jeff, let's start really from the beginning. What inspired you to be diving into the world of nature as you were living on the East Coast? I'd love for everyone to understand the life of a hippie, if it was really the case.
Oh, it was really the case, all right. Yeah. Well, what started for me was when I was really very young. My parents moved from Long Island, very suburban, out, area, out to the country, to the wilds of eastern Pennsylvania, and it really was quite wild. I became a country boy, fishing in the streams and roaming the hillsides, and I fell in love with nature. I found that nature had a resonance in me. There was something in me that just grabbed on to what I was experiencing as a young boy. And I just had so much fun out there. It was so different from the suburbs.
That's right.
The suburbs was the Village Bath Club and Long Island Sound on my dad's boss's yacht, and life like that.
Yeah.
But in the countryside, it was, how do you gut a fish? And all that kind of stuff. You get your hands.
So it really got you inspired in many ways.
It really did. And the food was really important because all summer long, when we had summers off, I would go out and find the raspberries, the black raspberries, the red raspberries, the huckleberries, the wild grapes.
Yeah.
And I just ate my way through the countryside all summer long.
Eating directly from the roots of Mother Nature, right?
Exactly.
And then what happened in your life to really make you define it as being your life, Mother Nature?
Well, I had a period where I took a job for Medical Economics magazine. An unlikely job.
Sounds very sexy.
Right. A very unlikely job for me. But I was the 25-year-old whiz kid on that. Everybody else were all editors who'd been on Time magazine, Newsweek, the
Yes.
New York Times. This was in the New York area. So what that did was release me from all the past, the countryside, and set me on a path. I started working for the National Lampoon and doing cartoons for them.
Because you draw as well,
Yeah.
beautifully well.
And I went to work for a crazy filmmaker named Fred McGubgub.
I'm not sure I know, but what kind of film was it all about?
His films are in the Museum of Modern Art.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. He was a very well-known filmmaker. And a wonderful guy, just the sweetest guy. So, I entered that life of comedy and fun and filmmaking and all that sort of thing. But my degree was in journalism.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get back into the newspaper world. So I moved to Allentown, Pennsylvania area.
The Amish country?
Yeah. And took a job on the Morning Call newspaper in Allentown.
So you do the murders, you do the all the tough stuff as a young newspaper, right?
Well, yeah, I was a young guy. I was still in my early 30s. And I decided I was going to be the courthouse reporter. So I go to the courthouse and I'm talking to the treasurer. And he says, you ought to check out that dog catcher. He's selling more licenses than there are. And I checked it out, and sure enough, this guy's embezzling like $5,000 worth of dog license money. So I thought I was the best.
This is not as bad as El Chapo, I'm glad to hear.
Not as bad. But the punchline of this story is good, because what finally happened was I quit the paper because they wouldn't print a story I wrote about the local country club that was exclusive and wouldn't allow Jewish people or black people in the country club. So I blew the whistle on them.
Yeah.
I said, come
rightfully so. What
Right.
a tragic.
What a tragic
ridiculous.
thing. Right. But that was then, times were different. And so I quit the paper. And I was looking for a job, and Rodale Press was a few miles
But
away.
I love that in you, Jeff, if you allow me to interrupt. You had the balls, the golden balls, to say, I don't have a job, but I disagree with the principle, I'm out of here. And I commend you for that. I will drink to that, because
I will too.
it's one thing to complain in life and to say we don't like it. It's another to make a decision and to say, I'm packing my bag, I'm out of here, and I'll define a new plan. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
No, I love this because, in life you gotta have the action of your thoughts, and you could just not speak about, oh, this is the way it is, and not do anything about it. And if you don't like it, just move on. And you did.
I did. I went to Rodale Press, which was publishing Prevention magazine about nutrients.
Yes.
And Organic Gardening, which was, of course, about organic gardening and farming.
Yeah.
And at that time, they were the only two magazines. They had a little one called Quinto Lingo, which was the same article in English and 4 other languages, side by side.
But this is pretty good too. Think
that
about
was
the
fun.
foreigners like me who needs to understand something.
So at any rate, here I am at Rodale, and about 2 years into my job there, I pick up the Morning Call newspaper. County treasurer caught embezzling $10 million. And I said, what? That guy saw me coming and pointed me at all these little guys who were taking money a little bit. And meanwhile, he's stuffing his pockets with millions of dollars.
Wow.
I said, he had me dead to rights. It taught me a lesson.
Yeah.
Don't believe anybody.
Yeah, here we go.
Keep your eyes open.
Except Mother Nature.
Except Mother Nature. You are exactly right. Because nature doesn't lie.
No.
There isn't a lie in any of it.
That's it.
It's true. And that's what got me really connected, and then remade the connection that I had as a teenager, wandering in the woods, swimming in the streams, being a country boy.
That's right.
And I saw that organics was really key because agriculture was all about poisoning things. Pesticides, in other words, kill the pests. Herbicides, in other words, kill the weeds. Fungicides, kill the fungus. And I started doing a lot of research into the scientific literature, which nobody there had ever done. So I started discovering that science really put the underpinnings under organics. And the key was microbes. People don't pay enough attention to microbes. You want a healthy soil? You have to give the microbes what they want in the forms they like to make them blossom in the soil, and they will feed the plants. If you feed the plants chemical fertilizers, they're just, chemicals.
That's right.
You don't get the full expression that the plant can give.
So you really understood the cycle and the rhythm of Mother Nature at that time. So you decided to orientate your life into that field, right?
Exactly.
So you led the organic magazine.
Well, I was the managing editor through much of the decade of the 70s. When Organic Gardening magazine...
Pretty cool years, I understand.
Yeah, they were the big years.
Is it when you got the golden teeth?
I got the golden tooth at the beginning of my Rodale experience when my truck broke down and I had to hitchhike into Emmaus to get to work. And a young black kid picked me up and he smiled at me and he had a gold tooth right up front.
Pretty cool. So he inspired you or he gave you his?
No, I had an experience in high school where I was playing baseball and a ball that was driven into the outfield landed in my mouth because I had stumbled at the moment I was going to catch it and broke this front tooth, so I had a crown. But it was a regular white crown. But when I saw this black kid with the gold tooth, I said, that is so cool.
So there's a black kid in you somewhere.
Yeah.
There's a black kid in all of us.
In all of us. I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we got to have fun.
Exactly. I love it. This is one of your key signature. In every of the covers of your book or in the portrait, you have that beautiful golden tooth. So friends, you see how life is. You got influence and you did it.
I went to the dentist and I said, take this white crown off and give me a gold tooth right up front. He said, are you sure? I said, definitely sure.
Let's drink to this. You see, I waited all those years to ask Jeff on camera this amazing question, and I'm delighted of the answer. So, Jeff, what has happened in the world of organics over the last 40 years? You started, and maybe let's put it in the context of the 70s, when you were really leading this amazing awareness campaign in many ways of what it's all about.
Well, at the same time I was doing Organic Gardening magazine, I was the executive editor of a newsletter called the Environment Action Bulletin.
Okay.
Because environmentalism was really happening in the 70s. People were discovering the science of ecology and how the environment is affected by the way we grow our food, for instance. And that was all dovetailed with organic agriculture.
Yes.
Because organic agriculture is a healthy agriculture, whereas conventional agriculture has a lot of downsides due to the use of the chemicals and the chemicals that kill things. Mm-hmm. So, at any rate, what I discovered over the ensuing years is the importance of microbes in not only the soil and the agricultural system, but in our food. For instance, if you take a wheat berry, a little wheat grain, and grind it into flour and taste it, it doesn't taste like much.
That's right.
But you bake it into bread with the action of yeast, those little microbes, and they work their magic. And what's better than the smell of a loaf of fresh baked bread? It's transcendently beautiful.
Transcendently.
Same thing with milk.
Yeah.
You take milk, you add some bacteria, and you get cheese.
That's right.
Which is like milk in excelsis.
That's it.
Glorious, glorious transformation. Or you take grape juice.
Yes.
And you add some yeast and maybe some leuconostoc bacteria and a few other things that are floating around. And they work a miraculous transformation, and it turns it into wine. And wine is so subtle and so beautiful and so multi-layered in the things that it gives you organoleptically, you know, to your senses,
Yes.
to your taste and smell and all that, that it's almost like a completely different substance. It's been transformed by microbes. And really, if we could see the world right, we would see that everything in this world is covered with microbes. And they're all working. Some of them are cause disease, but most of them are beneficial.
That's right.
I mean, most of them give us the things that we love the most. So, a thought for the microbes. And I have realized from that a human life has a point, if it's a life well lived, where transformation happens in the human being. Where instead of being like a kid, you're all self-concerned about yourself, your ego. You know, how am I going to get ahead? Well, I want that gal, or I want that guy, or, you know, all the other things we desire. But like the Buddha said, easy on the desire part. And what happens is that if you do let go of desire,
Yes.
and you put your eyes out on the world, you see a world of need. You see people in pain.
That's right.
You see soil that needs improving. You see all kinds of things that you can give yourself to. And when you make that transition, it's like grape juice into wine. It's like flour into bread.
And I love this analogy of the spirit, the spirituality to the actual transformation of nature.
Right.
You become very Buddhist.
Well, you do. And I think that, you know, Buddhism, like all religions, has its central point to make. And, you know, what the Buddha discovered was that the source of pain and dissatisfaction in life is desire. Just stop desiring, and what can you give to the world? It's like John Kennedy said.
That's right. Very much so. So, in the world of organics, what is as well to you some of the most important ideas we should bring forwards to all our friends to really realize that Mother Nature is not only the greatest gift, but is so well made on its own that it doesn't need anything much?
I would say the answer to that is to look at our current situation where we have ever increasing levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's causing climate change, and not all the climate change is good, as we've seen with the wildfires around here and the freeze in Texas and so forth. So we have to look at nature as the thing. The health of nature is the thing we have to preserve as a species. We have to be aware of the health of nature and the nature of health.
The nature of health.
Right. What is
so?
health?
Explain this relationship.
What is health? Health is biodiversity.
As I'm serving you a little healthy wine.
Yes, please.
Because we went on JCB 21, which you love.
I love.
By the way, as you're starting that definition, what does this wine makes you think?
This wine makes me think of lemons and apples. You know, brought to a creamy essence. In fact, I had JC, you had given me a bottle.
Yes.
And I had that for New Year's Eve.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Did it bring all the wishes you desired? Because, you know, it brings you intentions.
All but one. Because I not too many desires. You know?
That's right. I was trying to get you on this one.
Yeah, I know.
But you're a true Buddhist now. You forgot about desires.
I know. I'll just shut up and sit and meditate.
Well, you know, if you could meditate loud, we could all be your student.
Yes.
You know.
Well, I can just tell you what I've found over the years dealing with this. I mean, this is a field I write about.
Yes.
So I research it. I try to live it.
Yes.
And the central point of organics and the health of nature is biodiversity. In other words, if you think about an ecology, it's many different creatures who all participate at once in creating whatever it is.
Yes.
You know, if it's the soil, you have bacteria, you have actinomycetes, you have worms, you have all kinds of things. Tiny spiders, and they all have their part to play. And you know who said that first? It's amazing. He always said everything first. Shakespeare.
Oh, Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
The man of all seasons.
In Romeo and Juliet, he has the friar as a character. And the friar comes out on his porch one morning. He looks at the world and he says, "What's nature's mother is her tomb. What is her burying grave? That is her womb. And from her womb, diverse creatures we find." And then he says, "No matter how vile on the earth they live, all creatures to the earth some good doth give."
Well, let's have
Here's
a toast.
Shakespeare.
Maybe we toast with the
Yes,
most
let's do it.
Shakespearean wine we make on that note is the DeLoach Estate, organic and biodynamic.
Smells good.
Thank you. What do you think of the wine? Besides the citrus of the last JCB 21.
I think it, as opposed to a lot of wines that are over oaked, this seems to be properly oaked. I
Thank you.
love the oak note along the edges of my palate.
That's right.
Down the middle, you know, I'm getting apples, even more than lemons. Carneros, I tend to get more lemons than apples.
And in the Russian River, you get more apples.
To me, anyway.
Yeah.
You know, taste is so personal. You know, there's no accounting for taste, as the Romans.
That's right.
However, you know what you like. And that's what I always tell people when they talk about wine. They say, well, you know, I'm not educated. How am I supposed to know? You don't need to know anything about wine except one thing. Do you like it?
That's the fundamental,
That's it.
most important factor.
I don't care what
Yes
the wine
or
is.
no?
It can be some cheap swill.
Yes.
But if you like it, then
I'm with you.
Then you drink it.
So let's go back to the world of organics, because, dear friends, we have the master, we have the emperor of organics here. So keep inspiring us in this field. As you were on this great tangent, and forgive me, I interrupted you to serve you the wine.
No, thank goodness you did. I met so many wonderful people and got to know so many wonderful people working on that magazine, Organic Gardening. One of them was a poet, an essayist named Wendell Berry. And Wendell lives in Kentucky. And he writes about farming organically in a way that will really blow minds if you read it. He understands farming organically to the T, and he writes about it. I can't really sum up everything he has to say, except Wendell Berry, and Berry, if you're going to Google him.
For sure.
The other thing is biodynamics. And biodynamics was a form of gardening and farming that was created. The idea for it was created in the 1920s in Germany, and basically what it is an insight that a farm, if it's operating properly, is a single living organism with many parts. And that really is an ecological way of looking at a farm. It's the many parts contributing to the whole. We were talking before about the health of nature.
Yes.
Well, nature is healthy the more biodiverse it is. The more good guys you have adding their little bits, as Shakespeare said. You know, that's to the earth some good doth give. And it's true. You know, when organics, people say, well, how can you garden or farm organically when the insects will come and eat your plants up? Well, if you do it with a healthy biodiversity, the insects that eat the bad bugs, that eat your plants, they come too.
That's right.
And they keep them in check. And the whole thing starts to find a balance.
The check and balance of Mother Nature.
Balance.
Who created nature? Let's go spiritually. Is there an inventor of nature, or nature develops itself over time and creates and invents new creatures of nature? As us, the sapiens.
Well,
the Homo sapiens.
as you might expect, that is a loaded question.
Well, for a loaded brain, we got to have loaded questions.
But I have an answer that I personally have discovered. So I'll tell what that is. And that is, when I started reading about quantum mechanics in the quantum world, I realized that so much of what is in the quantum world depends on whether somebody is aware of it or not. If you're looking at energy,
yes,
it can be particles. If you look away and nobody's looking at it, it acts like waves. Literally acts like changes from particles to waves.
Yes.
But if you then examine it again, it acts like particles. That tells me that consciousness, awareness,
yes,
precedes matter.
That's right. I'm with you.
So what I think,
some of you may differ.
Well, yeah,
you know,
this is just my idea. But
I'm
my
sharing
idea,
it.
and I'm glad you do. My idea is that there is a universal consciousness
Yes.
that is aware of everything. That each little stone is at least aware of itself, if nothing else.
Yes.
And probably, almost surely nothing else. But the universal consciousness creates, I mean, there are only a few particles. There are quarks and gluons and, a few others. And they only have 3 states: spin, charge, and charm.
Charm, yeah.
Yeah, those 3 states. Everything is made out of them.
That's right.
So I think the consciousness suffuses all matter. That's why in the quantum world, things can change depending on whether somebody's aware of them or not.
That's right.
There was an English philosopher, Bishop Berkeley, who had that same idea. I remember taking a philosophy course in college and being kind of stunned by what he had to say. And what he said was basically that it all happens in here. We can't really say much about out there. What we see and deal with all happens in here. That was interesting to me.
Absolutely. Develop that further, though.
Well, I see an orange tree over there.
Yes.
It's only an orange tree to me because I'm a human being,
Yes.
and my brain interprets it as an orange tree.
Yes.
However, if I'm a fox, maybe I just look at the fruit and try to get some. If I'm a bird, I look at it and I say, there's a home for my nest.
That's right.
If I'm a microbe, I say, I'm going to colonize these leaves. So really, what it is depends on the creature that's
right.
aware of it. And what Berkeley was driving at is that everything we see is an interpretation of our human brain.
Absolutely.
Because we put meaning on stuff.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
So within that, how do elements of nature interact with one another? Because I feel sometimes we look as a Monet painting in a very visual interpretation without understanding what happens. In other words, give us your view of how, let's say, tree communicates to one another, whether it's through a microbe coming in and say, oh, trees, in all my forest, something just came in, you want to be aware of it. How they move, how they speak, and how nature is fully interrelated.
Well, there's a scientist in British Columbia named Suzanne Simard. And Suzanne has been investigating forests for many years now. And what she's found is that the roots of the trees in the forest are colonized by fungi that are, they live on the sweet exudate from the roots.
Yes.
In other words, the tree sends out sugar, the fungus lives on the sugar, the fungus sends mycelia out into the soil and gathers phosphorus and other nutrients and water and brings them back and feeds them to the trees. That was the first insight. Then she found that healthy trees, when they send down their seeds or nuts and they grow into seedlings, they transport food and water to
Yes.
the seedlings.
Huh.
They mother the seedlings.
They mother the
They
seedlings.
give them shade, which they need when they're little, and they give them water and nutrients. And they literally mother the seedlings. Then she found that the trees communicate,
That's right.
that the fungus mycelia that fill the forest are like a computer's motherboard,
That's it.
and the trees do communicate. You can have a tree attacked by some insect over here, and all the trees over here will start producing chemicals
That's
to
it.
resist
To
that
resist
insect.
it. It's
Right.
fascinating, I think.
So her ultimate insight, or aperçu, as they say in France,
Mm-hmm.
her ultimate insight was that there's no such thing as an individual tree in the forest. It's just forest.
Mm-hmm.
And it includes all those biodiverse
That's right.
elements. And once again, the nature of health in the organic system, in organic worldview, is a rich biodiversity. The more the merrier,
That's
and
right.
the more the healthier.
Which speaks a lot for who we are as individual in many ways as far as the diversity of it. And the greater the diversity we have, the better we are.
Yeah, when you look at the last 20 years and what we've discovered about ourselves, we realize there's no such thing as an individual human being. We are a composite creature, just like the forest
That's right.
is a composite creature. In our intestines, in our digestive system, there lives 9 out of every 10 cells in our body, in our gut bacteria. They control our immune system. They link up through the vagal nerve with our brain and control our moods. That's why you have a gut feeling that this is right.
Oh, that's where it came from.
That's where it came from. Yes. So the gut bacteria also have all kinds of other functions that they perform in your body. So if you look at an individual cell in your body, in
Yes.
the center of that cell is a mitochondrion. And they are the little energy, the power plants that power the cells. Well, they were once free-floating, free-living microbes in the primordial ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Then they found an animal that was starting to put cells together, and they colonized those cells. And now here we are, each of our cells having a mitochondrion,
That's
acting as a little power plant in there. So it's a matter of cooperation as the elements of the biodiverse life come together, they cooperate.
Well, on that note, what is the most compelling observation that you have within Mother Nature? What the most impressive that you say, ooh-ha, I get it, and this is one of the most brilliant things I've seen that has been created as je ne sais quoi?
Well, I would say I got this insight for what you're talking about back when I worked on organic gardening, because I was doing organic gardens at home because I felt that if I didn't garden,
That's
how
right.
could I write about it intelligently?
For sure. So you
I had
do
to get living experience.
Yeah.
What I found is, and every organic gardener and farmer knows this, that there is no shortage of information about how to make the world a sweet, healthy, pleasant place to live, instead of, a grimy, chemical-filled
Yes.
repository of deathly substances. And that is that nature knows best. All we have to do is see how nature does it, and then use that as the template for our actions in whatever area of life we're talking about. Sure, farming and gardening, but academia or winemaking or
Yes.
whatever. That nature's way of doing it, always, because it's true.
What is, on that note, for you the greatest lesson of Mother Nature?
To be humble enough in yourself to realize that you don't have the answers, but nature does. And you have to seek her out. For instance, can you imagine what a paradise this continent would have been
Yes.
had the Europeans who came here in the first years been humble enough to understand that the Native Americans had their stuff together,
That's right.
that they knew what they were doing. For instance, the Menominee Indians in Wisconsin own a 250,000 acre forest. They've been managing it and selling timber from it since 1850. They've sold over 6.4, I think, or 6.3 billion board feet of lumber out of that forest over the time. And yet the forest today has more standing timber than it had in 1850.
That's fantastic.
Because they took trees that were unhealthy, and they took trees that were kind of bent a little bit and made the lumber out of them. They didn't do it for money. They managed it for health. They left all the healthy trees. They call them the grandmother trees.
I see.
And they're the ones that connect everything underground through the mycelium. So that's where the health comes from. Well, they understood this, maybe not in scientific verbiage, but they understood it in the gut level. They knew what they were doing. So, here comes the Europeans, and we kill them all and take over and rape the place.
Yeah.
What a paradise this continent could have been if we had only had some humility.
And luckily, in spite of all that, it is still a paradise.
It really is if you see it.
Yeah.
I was driving one time from Allentown to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I stopped to pick up a hitchhiker. And he was a very good-looking young man, early 20s, big shock of golden hair. And I said, "You want to sit up front with my wife and I?" And he said, "No, I'll sit in the back. I got my pack, I'll lay against it." So, okay, fine. So halfway down the road to Harrisburg, I said to my wife, I said, "I think that guy's an angel. He looks like an angel. He has a vibe like an angel.
Really?
Maybe he's an angel.
Yeah?
Let's have some mystery in the world."
Yeah, for sure.
So-
and the world is full of mystery. We know that.
So sooner or later, he knocks on the window. I pull the truck over on the side of the road. He hops out, throws his pack over his shoulder, looks at me and says, "It's heaven if you know it." True story.
Hey, the glass and the echo speaks for it. So, as you build this amazing awareness of Mother Nature, what is for you the most impactful manuscript you wrote with the greatest influence, and what was that, and how did it transform, the vision of people into the world of organics?
Well, I think the book that, in my opinion, had the greatest impact was a book I wrote called Landscaping with Nature.
Okay.
And basically what I said was, forget about the garden and the embankments and the planting of flowers and all that stuff that you read in Gertrude Jekyll's work and all that kind of stuff. I said, forget about that. Go out in nature and take a walk around in the countryside, as raw nature as you can find, and see what appeals to you. What strikes your sense of beauty? And then take a notebook and kind of make a sketch of what it is that you really related to and thought was beautiful.
I love this idea.
And go home and look at your yard or whatever you got and say, how can I translate this idea into my yard? And that's what the whole book is about.
Wow. I love the book, and many of you could still find it.
It's around.
Probably here and there. It's not in reprint, but it's out there for sure. It was one of your biggest selling books.
It sold close to 500,000 copies.
500,000 copies, wow.
But what I didn't know, I was talking to a landscape architect, and he said, "We loved your book in college." And I said, "In college?" He said, "Yeah, it was our textbook. One of our textbooks." I had no idea.
Well, that's brilliant. I'm going to let you finish your DeLoach Estate White, maybe this one. And I'd love for you to tell us why we have those beautiful horns in front of us. And why horns in the world of biodynamic farming. And what does You know, the cow represents from Mother Nature. Because no one speaks more eloquently than you. So, Mr. Cox.
Well, the Biodynamic Method has a series of potions like that you create.
Yes.
One of them is you take a cow horn, like one of these guys, and you fill it with cow manure, and you bury it over the winter time, and then you bring it up in the spring, and according to biodynamic theory, the material inside has now rotted.
Yes.
So it's very, full of energy and full of nutrients that plants like in the forms that they like. But it also has absorbed earth energies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's full of the winter's
That's right.
power. It's full of the earth's power coming into it. So then you take that manure, that rotted manure out, mix it with water, and the biodynamic...
Dynamize it in a certain way.
You have to stir it in a certain way and then back the other way.
The yin and the yang.
That's right. So is it airy-fairy? Sure. Why not? Because it works. The biodynamic gardeners and farmers really are some of the best farms and gardens in America. I know them. I don't do biodynamics front to back, but I appreciate it. I knew about biodynamics before I knew about organics.
That's right. Well, you've understood the world and how it functions, from the moon, the lunar system, the solar system, and the earth and their interaction, before even the plants.
Well, it makes perfect sense. For instance, the moon has an effect on the oceans, the tides, pulls the water up, lets the water down on a regular basis. It affects women in their menses, direct effect, tied right to the cycle of the moon.
Yes.
So who's to say it doesn't have other effects on plants and soil processes and other things? That's just the moon.
That's right.
Then we have the sun, which is quite a lot more powerful than the moon. And then out there, the planets, who knows? The biodynamic people say, yes, we can measure these effects, we can quantify them to some extent. Not completely, because we don't know completely.
That's right.
How it all happened. But we can use what we do know to improve our gardening and farming. So I have great respect for them. And I think people who are reductionist and look at science only without that whiff of mystery, like a good
Yes.
perfume on something,
That's right.
that whiff of mystery makes life worth living.
Well, and I'm with you, because I come more from the nature and the whiff of mystery, as you so well said, rather than science, because I'm far away from a scientist and can barely understand anything of it. And I realize that we meet at some stage, and if we succeed to meet, it's very powerful. But one without the other does not function too well.
Well, as I said before, when I went to work for Organic Gardening magazine, only J.I. Rodale, the founder, who was a wonderful man, just a brilliant guy, doesn't get his due. But I started looking at the scientific literature in terms of what they had to say, what the literature had to say about organic methods. And I found, for instance, in a book called The Nature and Property of Soils by a scientist, Niall Brady, he described the cation exchange capacity. Mm-hmm. Now stick with me on this one. It's very simple. Cations are ions when a salt comes apart to a positive part, the sodium, and the negative part, the chlorine.
I'm still there.
All right, yeah, salts. They come apart in water,
Yes.
and they become ionized. Actually, they lose electrons, but we won't go there. So, at any rate, the soil takes those ions and uses compost
Yes.
as a medium for sticking them on and holding them despite rains and irrigation so they don't wash away. then there's a certain amount of these nutrients in the soil solution, the water in the soil. And plant roots
Yes.
can gauge that. They know what's going on. They take nutrients out of the soil solution, and the compost, as they take nutrients out, the compost releases them to maintain the stasis, the balance in the soil.
This is
That's-
brilliant.
This is this cation exchange capacity.
Yeah.
So I'm reading about this, and I'm saying, oh my goodness, this is what we've been talking about in organics all these years.
That's right.
But we never had the science for it. So,
So now we bring all the scientists, hopefully, into that world, thanks to this.
well, that was one example of just reading the science.
Yeah.
Gives you an insight into why organics works. Because organics is all about making compost and humus. And humus is the electrically charged particles that hold the ions to itself,
That's right.
the nutrients
That's
to
right.
itself, and don't let them wash away, and then put them out into the soil water as needed, in the forms the plants like, in the amounts that they use to make healthy plants.
The greater sense of adaptability.
Right. Well, it's a natural system.
That's it.
Let nature be your teacher.
Is the world starting to understand, you think, what we're talking about?
Well, when the former president told the scientists at the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, that they all had to move in 1 month to Kansas City from Beltsville, Maryland, where they've been for 70 years. And okay, you got to all go to Kansas City. And don't bring your equipment. Just go be in Kansas City. No, nothing going on there. Maybe with the new president. No, it's not. I think the new president's great, but he also has put in as Secretary of Agriculture a guy named Tom Vilsack,
Yes.
who is strictly conventional agriculture oriented.
But besides, and you think it starts with the governments and trickles down? Or
Well,
it seems that the people, though, as consumers, I mean, taste this wine. The Maboroshi Vineyards is next to your house. Literally a 12-acre estate. The owners, Japanese and American. It means whimsical dreams in Japanese, Maboroshi. Had this beautiful plot of land, and they said, teach us organic. We did. Teach us biodynamic. We did. They all converted and taste the quality of the wines. It's absolutely insane to feel the sunlight and the energy of Mother Nature.
I can't even get past the nose. The nose is so beautiful. It really is one of the. It's just an exquisite nose.
Thank you.
I haven't even tasted it yet, but
Yeah.
let me go.
Well, 80% of a good wine tasting is when you nose, right? So the big question I always have is, how do we transcribe it to people as consumers to make sure the world understand organics and biodynamics and how essential it is for themselves?
Well, there was a slogan we used back in the day on organic gardening, and that was "Make it with nature."
Yeah.
It had a double.
Make it with nature.
It had a double entendre. Make it in those days, in the hippie days,
Yeah.
also meant making love.
Yeah, for sure.
Make it with
Well,
nature.
I got that part.
But also make it with nature meant
Yeah.
follow nature's rules and you'll get a better product. So I would say that simple rule is fully on display in this Pinot Noir. The Pinot itself has that lovely cherry fruit, a little bit of cola, but also a firm structure, just a beautiful structure. So it's not fat or flabby or doesn't let you down in any way. It's got a great nose. This is really a nice product.
Thank you. And this is a pure Mother Nature gift because it's all following the rules you've explained before. So how do we further convey? You've written in magazines, in newspapers, you've written over 20 books on the subject. What do you recommend we do to make this world aware of how important this movement is? And it should not even be a movement, it should be statu quo, it should be fait accompli.
I would say, look, task one of your employees who has some time on their hands.
Yeah.
If you have any of those. But
plenty.
Okay. Task
They're
them,
half on vacation right now.
well, task them to find out who is working on these insights into nature.
Yes.
What organizations, businesses, individuals like Wendell Berry, businesses like, biodynamic food producers, organizations like the Environmental Working Group, identify all of them and reach out and say, here we are, we're trying to do this right, we want to spread the word, how can we work together?
That's right.
And investigate how you can work together. Or form a consortium that carries some real clout in the media.
And on that note, how do you recommend to all our friends with us today to just cultivate their own garden and what to do in their own world?
Monsieur Voltaire.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so cultivating your own garden, the Voltairean idea. We have so many wonderful friends around the world with us tonight. Would you give them an advice on how to discover nature, how to be in touch with nature, and how not to be afraid of it, and just maybe to cultivate their own garden?
Well, so many millions of people do garden that I wouldn't presume to give anybody advice, generally in that area. But for people who don't really grow a garden,
yes,
or anything more than a couple potted plants, there really are some major benefits to gardening. For instance, when I worked on organic gardening, I started something called the Major Vegetable Series.
Yes.
And I got all the staff together and I assigned everybody 1 or 2 vegetables to cover. And I said, you take that vegetable and you do a deep dive into the science, into how it's used around the world, everything. I went top to bottom, front to back on that vegetable.
Yes.
Took 10 years.
That's fantastic.
To do that.
And that work is summarized in one of your book.
Yes.
Which is?
How to Grow Vegetables Organically.
I have this book, dear friends. I've used it.
It's
for
amazing.
Probably the last 9 years with my daughter since birth. And I can tell you they know more than I knew at the same time, and my grandmother was my teacher. So I love that book.
Yeah, and it has my name on it, but it's really the work of the entire staff of the magazine, including myself. I did the first one to show them what I wanted.
Yes.
I did asparagus.
Oh.
Long form story, everything about asparagus. So that really worked great. So I would say it may not be in print, but if you go to a book finding service,
yes,
and just put How to Grow Vegetables Organically by Jeff Cox, you'll get a copy. There are hundreds of thousands of them out there. That would be the book to have to really get you started on serious gardening. But what happens is when you garden, it's the little things that you run across.
yes.
For instance, if you're digging up the soil, you may run across a marble some kid dropped many years ago.
Yes.
Or a spring that got in there, or who knows what. One time I did a row in my garden about 13 feet long, 2 feet wide, and I went through every inch of that soil and I put in a box all the things I found.
Yes.
And they were incredible. There was an Indian arrowhead. There was a whole bunch of stuff. So you start noticing things as you get into it. You'll notice how the plants grow. You'll notice how plants recover from being pulled up and thrown aside, and yet a root goes under the soil and pulls the plant back up. You'll hear the birds singing. In fact, if you listen to this, you can hear birds.
That's right.
And you can hear other things.
The flow of water.
The flow of water. And the water's laughter, as it's called, is a song that's been sung since the beginning of time.
That's right.
You know?
It's a beautiful song.
It's a beautiful
listen
song.
to it. And I'm sure most of you can hear it through the garden and the theater of nature we created.
Yeah.
So everyone should, a little bed, it could be herbs, it could be basil, as we in full spring swings, it could be anything like that, right? Just to understand the flow of growth.
Well, I would suggest, like the song that Paul Simon wrote, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme are all real good. I would add oregano to that.
Yes.
And maybe summer savory and marjoram. And just have a few pots out on the balcony or anywhere you get sun, because culinary herbs tend to like a lot of sun. Good rich soil and keep them well watered. And every time I make spaghetti, I get oregano right from the garden and throw it in.
Fantastic.
It helps tremendously to lift the dish to something else. You know,
that's right.
Fresh herbs really are great.
And what really inspires you as you write so prolifically? Where do you get your inspiration? And I know you're going to say Mother Nature, of course, but go beyond that, Jeff, as 20 plus titles, still writing phenomenally, still being so inspired. Give us some clues about how to follow such a prolific mind.
I would say it depends on how much you love what you do.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, when I was 16 years old, we had a poetry writing contest in my English class. And I dashed off a poem at home one night and submitted it. And the teacher said, you know, this is really a good poem. And she submitted it to the Best High School Poetry Anthology, and they accepted it. And then
Congratulations.
it went on to the Best High School Poetry of the last decade.
Wow.
And they accepted it. And who knows where it went from there, but it's maybe still going on. That really encouraged me.
Yes.
And another teacher got me aside and said, you know, you have a way with words.
Yes.
You ought to consider being a writer. So when I got to the university, that's why I took journalism as my major. Because, you know, writing about reality seemed more exciting to me at the time than just creating fiction.
That's right.
Though good fiction is always based on the fundamentals of reality.
That's right.
I learned later.
A good fiction is always based on the fundamental of reality.
Yeah.
We heard that, and I so much.
Well, otherwise, if it's only blue sky stuff, it kind of leaves you. You don't have your feet in the ground.
That's it.
The wonderful thing about Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings trilogy is, yeah, it's all fantastic, but the feet are in the ground.
That's right.
The hobbits are being menaced. The orcs are swinging blades at you.
That's
you know, reality is right there, ready to take you down.
Yeah.
So he knew that. So I am the luckiest guy in the world. I get up every morning with an ache in my gut because I get to write today.
That's right.
Because I love doing it so much.
Huh.
And what I love is the insights that spring from working with material, where you see something new and you say, I can write that, and I'll bet few people would be gross to think you're the only one who's ever come up with this. But, you know, I haven't read this anywhere else, so I'm going to write this. And I find that my readers, if they let me know how they feel about what I've written, the thing they like the most is they learn something.
Yes.
You know, in other
That's
words,
what I love about reading you is I learn such a great deal. And that's the most important thing is, you know, what you get out of spending 30 minutes reading about something very special is great. The entertainment factor, of course, but the learning factor is essential.
And I think that rests on the kind of personality that has an insatiable curiosity.
Yes.
And I think I have an insatiable curiosity about what stuff is, how it works, all that kind of thing. But I think the readers do too. I think everybody does to some extent.
As long as we show it to them.
Yeah.
in a great way that makes them want to go back to it?
You know, I've made writing my living almost my whole life. And I don't think I could have done that if I wasn't prying open reality and showing people stuff they hadn't thought about before.
I so much agree. So, dear friends, an amazing time with the famous Jeff Cox. I think we're going to have to do many more sessions with Jeff like those, because I've asked him 1% of the questions I had. So, Jeff, will you be up to coming back and being on live and with us and inspiring us?
Well, I've always been inspired by you, by your wines, and by the work that you do, and by your focus on organic and biodynamic, healthy gardening and farming. So that's really where we meet.
Exactly.
And I think you respect what I do, and I respect what you do, and that's the basis for friendship and mutual respect. So, of course, anytime you want me to come back, I'd be happy.
Jeff, I'm so excited, and I would love for you, you know, we are in March, to send a message to all our friends, your message, inspirational message, whatever that may be, to inspire all our friends around the world, from Asia to Europe to South America, who are with us tonight as far as the years ahead of us, from your perspective.
Well, I would simply say that everything is sacred in a way, and you should treat it that way. Think about the world as it is as a garden, and see how you can improve it and make things grow. It doesn't have to be with plants or in a garden or a farm. It can be in whatever area you're working. Just be a mensch, you know. Bring it up. Have fun. Drink good wine.
Jeff, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, the famous Jeff Cox. Over 20 books. You're going to now see them passing in front of your screens as each and every cover. You should get them. I'm fortunate to have almost the whole collection, and I'm inspired at all time just by looking at it and dreaming always what is inside. So, Jeff, thank you again. And to all of you, being the gardeners of the world and the best friend of Mother Nature.